This video will be the most complete and comprehensive guide to Star Wars Battlefront 2 Dueling. We will cover the following: the basics, star cards, parries, dodging, abilities, lunges, hook swings, and so much more. The video will be separated into sections. A basic section, reviewing the fundamentals of the game mode and rules. Then it will move into individual hero and villain sections, where I'll go over all of the Saber heroes. Then, at the very end of the video, I will review predictability, playstyles, and a place where you can ask any additional questions, join the Discord, or anything else extra, such as advanced techniques or other tips. The entire video will be timestamped, so feel free to jump around. But sometimes there are crossovers between specific heroes or villains, so I recommend watching the entire video. Now let's start with the basics. This guide is all about Hero Showdown, a game mode within Star Wars Battlefront 2 where two players can 1v1 or duel. Also, for this basic section, it is important to note that I will not go into great detail about any character in particular. This is because in the character-specific sections, I will go into great detail, outlining every ability, every combo, every type of lunge, and how to do it in their respective section. So for a duel, it's important to know what is allowed and what is banned. The following is banned and will not be reviewed due to being unbalanced or game-breaking. Specific star cards like the Obi-Wan regen card, or glitches like reverse thrust surge, or even characters like Vader, all will not be reviewed in this video. For a duel, there's no ledging, there's no cheating, or specific mods that grant an unfair advantage. For a complete rules list, please refer to the Dueling Order, a Discord of over 1,000 members dedicated to ranking players, hosting tournaments, and everything else to do with Battlefront 2 dueling. Now that you have a basic understanding of the rules, it's important to know where to fight. Some maps are better than others for dueling. For this video in particular, Yavin and Crate will be used. Now I will quickly show all the correct and best locations to fight on each and every map within Star Wars Battlefront 2. However, I personally recommend trying to fight on Yavin or Crate since they are flat and you have plenty of space. Now, let's move into star cards. Star cards are super important to dueling. They can be upgraded and selected for certain and specific buffs. They affect your character's health, force abilities, or even saber damage. Each hero or villain can select 3. There are glitches, hidden effects, and combinations that each and every star card has. It's important to note that not all star cards do what they actually say, and this will be covered in this video. Now, let's move into the game and quickly review health regen. Each character has a health bar that will lower if you're damaged. If you're not damaged for a time, your health bar will regenerate. This is different for every character. The speed that they regen, the amount that they regen, is all dependent upon who you are. Stamina. Stamina is a critical aspect of dueling. Each character has a stamina bar that will decrease if you swing or block an attack. You will regen your stamina if you release your block. If you run out of stamina, you can no longer block. A dodge is another essential aspect to dueling. It is a quick movement that allows your character to avoid attacks. You have a damage reduction while doing so, and it depends on what directional key you're holding. If you're holding A on your keyboard, which would be left, it'll go to the left. Similar to health and stamina, they will regenerate over time, and every hero and villain has a set number of dodges they can use. Now moving on to parries. A little bit more complicated, but also really, really important, and may take a little bit of practice. So while you're holding block, a player will swing at you, and right as they hit you, while you're holding block, you will click and you will be able to hit them without getting hit yourself, and that is called the parry. And to do a double parry, it is the exact same thing, but instead of swinging once after getting hit, you swing twice. However, it is important to note while doing a double parry, you are vulnerable to be hit on your second hit. And this is not the case for a single parry where you are invulnerable from being hit. Now moving on to abilities. Each character has 3 abilities. They can be activated by using Q, E, or F on your keyboard. They each have cooldowns. Some are force abilities while others are saber abilities. They can be used in a multitude of ways and will be demonstrated in detail in the character-specific sections. Now moving on to lunges. A lunge is an animation that occurs when your character locks onto an opponent and is launched towards them. There are many types of lunges. Dodge lunges, follow-up attacks from force abilities, and you can even pair them with a hook swing. Or, if a player is running away, You can use paste clicking to track an opponent. How to do a lunge? It's pretty simple. All you do for a dash lunge is dash backwards, and as you're in the process of dashing backwards, click once and you'll be launched towards your opponent. You can do that dashing backwards, to the left, or to the right. Follow-up attacks and force abilities. This will be covered in the character-specific sections, but just for instance, using Dooku's lightning, the player is ragdolled and you click at a paced timing. You're not spam clicking. Think of it as clicking like 1, 2, 3. It may take a little bit of time to get the timing correct. Don't worry about it. Just practice, and over time your lunges will improve and you'll be able to get extra damage on your opponents. Another one that can be used with every single hero or villain is a dash then hook swing lunge. All you do is a regular dash backwards and lunge onto your opponent. However, while you're in the process of lunging towards your opponent, you turn your camera 180 degrees and do a hook swing. Now moving on to hook swings. This is a jump swing that hits the opponent's back and bypasses their block. It can be chained to use with a bunch of abilities and can be really effective. Do a hook swing. All you need to do is release your block, sprint towards your opponent, jump, turn your camera 180 degrees, and swing while you're in the air. Now moving on to animation cancels. This is a technique that can be used to greatly shorten or even cancel a swing, or in some instances, some force ability animations as well. So the most basic animation cancel is to do a dodge, and while you're holding block, you wait a second, jump, then click. Now this will be tricky. This will take a lot of practice to get it right, but watch this video, watch me doing it, watch the overlay, and just try to get your timing. And eventually you'll get it once and you'll get it again. Now a lunge animation cancel. As we covered before, if your character does a lunge, you do not need to do a dodge to initiate the animation cancel. So all you need to do is do a lunge, then while holding block, just wait a second, jump, click. It's the same as a dodge animation cancel, except you don't need the dodge to start it. And important to note, you need to hold the directional key for it to work. So if you're having trouble wondering why your lunge animation cancel is not working, make sure you're holding WA or CD and it will work. There are also force animation cancels, which is particularly useful for Luke. You will shorten his push animation by animation cancel, and instead of swinging, uses force push. Now let's begin with the Luke section of the video. I'll now put on the screen his base statistics, which include his HP, regen amount, and all other stats. So for Luke in particular as a character, he has a very, very fast regen rate and a very, very low regen delay. However, his total regen amount is the lowest. Now quickly reviewing the star cards. Epicenter is a star card that increases your repulse damage within a specific secondary circle. However, it has a hidden ability to deal extra damage through block. Deflection Mastery does not work. Intensify is very useful, especially in longer duels. Stronger Push can sometimes be useful, but I don't recommend it. Rush Immunity, very useful if you plan on rushing a high amount. Jedi Reflexes, not really useful, and I do not recommend it. Jedi Fighter, I sometimes recommend it based upon your playstyle. It is also glitched, as it adds a 70% stamina boost and decreases all stamina costs. Extended Push, I do not recommend. Strong Repulse, I also do not recommend. For the best loadouts, I recommend Intensify, Epicenter, Rush Immunity, and then a secondary loadout is Intensify, Epicenter, and Jedi Fighter. Now let's review his abilities. He has a Push, a Repulse, and a Rush. His Push can ragdoll opponents, and you can lunge onto them after doing so. Repulse, you are very vulnerable while doing it in the animation, and you can hit through block to cancel regen and deal about 40 damage through a player's block. Can also ragdoll opponents and can be comboed with Push. Rush is a great ability to be utilized for mostly movement. It is very easily double parried, so use it carefully. Now moving on to the ability parries. You can either parry into Push, and all you have to do to execute this is parry and then immediately click your Q key while still holding block. Then you can launch after your opponent. Then parry with Push, holding block, and instead of clicking to parry, all you do is click Q. Parry with Rush, the same principle as parrying with Push. You're holding block, and instead of clicking to swing, you click F. Then you can parry into Rush by parrying, then clicking F. Lunges. Now let's quickly review the push lunges. If you push a player, you can click at a paced rate and you will be able to lunge after them to get extra damage. You can do the same thing with Repulse. And if you use a dash, you can also lunge after the dash animation is over. Now let's view the combos. You can push plus lunge. You can either get 1 or 2 hits. Your second hit, you will be vulnerable to damage, so be careful. Repulse plus lunge. same principle as push. Make sure you're timing those hits. Repulse plus push plus lunge. Same principle as always. Paced hits and make sure the player is on the ground when you execute your push. Then finally repulse plus shortened jump swing plus push plus lunge. Definitely the most complicated one. So first you want to execute a repulse, then run over to your opponent, jump by tapping spacebar, then as you're about to hit the ground, swing, and your jump swing will not be a complete animation. Then right when you hit them, use your push and then lunge out of them for a couple of hits. Now hook combos. A hook, then a hit. To execute this, just makes you land on their heels and quickly turn around and hit immediately. Hook plus push plus lunge. So you can execute a hook, then immediately push and lunge after them. Then a push hook by running through the player, and instead of swinging to do a hook, use your push. Then the next one would be a hook plus a dash. Do a regular hook, then immediately click F. Now we're viewing some mechanics of Luke. His dash can hit through block if you're directly behind them. To get in this position, you want to either dash through them or simply run behind them. Also, for Grievous, your dash will go through his block if you are slightly to the left of him or slightly to the right, but I prefer the left. It's a little bit easier to get. Execute your dash while looking more towards his feet and slightly turn your camera. You may not get this your first try, but just keep practicing, you'll definitely get the hang of it. Now on to an animation cancel of Luke. As we covered in the basic section, to do an animation cancel, you dash, then jump, swing. However, instead of swinging, all you do is replace the swing with a push, and the push animation is shortened. Now moving on to Rey. So she has average health, average regen rate, average total regen, and 2 dodges. However, she can gain 3 dodges with her star card. The only thing of note in her base statistics would be her stamina regeneration is very fast. Now let's review the star cards. Balance, she gains an extra dodge, extraordinarily useful and I highly recommend it. Farsight, I don't recommend. Street Fighter, I don't recommend either. Resilient Dash, I definitely recommend for certain loadouts. Damaging Strike. This is actually glitched, so your initial strike is actually the additional 30%. Strong Mind, I also don't recommend, but it is glitched and it is only increased by 25% instead of 30%. Focus Sight, I do recommend. Deep Mind is actually increased by 25% instead of 30%, and I do not recommend it. Then there's Opportunist. I've heard that it doesn't work, but regardless, I don't recommend it. Now for the best loadouts. I recommend Damaging Strike, Balance, and Focus Sight, or Damaging Strike, Resilient Dash, and Balance. Now let's move on to her abilities. She has a Dash Strike, which can actually hit a player in the back if you quickly turn your camera for a quick knockdown, and Insight, which lowers her stamina costs and increases her damage. Also, she cannot be hit while doing this animation. Mind Trick, which reverses and slows the controls of an opponent. During this animation, however, you can be hit. Now let's move on to the ability parries. You can parry into Dash Strike. All you need to do is hold block, parry, and then immediately activate the Dash Strike. Make sure when you're doing this to do the parry, do the Dash Strike, but don't forget about the follow-up hits. Then you can parry with Mind Trick. All you have to do is hold block, and instead of doing a swing parry, all you do is activate Mind Trick instead. Then you can parry with Dash Strike. So same thing as Mind Trick. All you do is hold block, and instead of swinging, all you do is activate Dash Strike. The only lunge for Rey is when a player is thrown far away after a Dash Strike. This is very situational, but if it does happen, make sure to lunge. Now on to our combos. Dash Strike plus Jump Hit. Again, It's very situational, but if you want to make sure you get the hit or if they're too far away, this could be useful. However, I do recommend doing dash strike, then 2 hits most of the time. However, if you go for the second hit, you are vulnerable to damage. Now moving on to hook combos. Let's start with the hook hit. All you do is a regular hook, and once you land, swing again. Now hook plus dash strike plus the follow-ups. All you do is do a regular hook, then once you land, instead of swinging, activate dash strike and run into their back. Now make sure when you do this to do the follow-ups as well. Then dash plus hook. This is useful to catch your opponent off guard, or if you don't end up hitting them with the dash, you can go into the dash through the hook. All you need to do this is activate the dash, and you'll have the momentum to do a hook. So activate the dash, press spacebar, turn your camera 180 degrees, and there you go. That's dash plus hook. And then a very simple mechanic of raise is to use dash behind the player's block. To do this most effectively, you sprint at the opponent and activate dash and really spin your camera to try to get it behind the player's block. Now moving on to Obi-Wan. Let's first review his base stats. He has pretty good starting HP, but what stands out for him is his total regen amount and his amazing stamina. Now let's review the star cards. Jedi Resilience, which increases his total health regeneration, and it is banned for dueling. Perfect defense, I don't really recommend it. It's very situational, personally not for me. Give it all. This can be extremely useful, especially when players are really close to you, and it helps you get your lunges much easier. Think it over. Again, I also recommend this. Just very annoying for the opponent. Can't use their abilities for a longer period of time. Safeguard, don't really recommend it. Quick and focus sometimes can be good. Again, can help you with lunges, but not really for me. Forward, I think everybody should have this in their Obi-Wan loadout. Increases your damage with their rush. Very useful. More doubts, actually glitched a little bit. The increased reach is 45% instead of 50, and I do not recommend it. And critical deflection is absolutely useless for dueling. Now let's move on to the best loadouts. For the first one, it's forward, think it over, and give it all. Or forward, quicken focus, and give it all. Now let's review his abilities. He has a push that is similar to Luke, but it actually charges up and has a very high damage reduction while doing so. He has a mind trick, which disables abilities. However, keep in mind, it will not work if the player is ragdolled or during some abilities like Maul saber throw. Defensive rush cannot be hit by saber attacks, but can still be hit by force abilities. Also, if you do the secondary swing of defensive rush, you can be hit sometimes. Now let's move on to ability parries. First, let's start with parry plus push. All you do is a regular parry, and once you parry, you immediately push. Then parry with dash. All you do is parry, then quickly release your block, and immediately dash. Then parry with push. Again, instead of doing a regular parry, all you do is parry with the push instead. Then parry with mind trick, similar to Rey, how she parries with her ability. All you do is instead of doing a regular parry, you just parry with mind trick. Now for his combos. You can do a push plus a lunge plus a hit. Now sometimes you can get 2 hits while you're doing this, but again, sometimes you can be vulnerable for the second hit, so be careful. Then for the second one, you do a push, then lunge, then hit, then right when you do the hit, activate defensive rush. Then a very basic one is mind trick and then use defensive rush. So Obi-Wan's lunges are generally more difficult because his push charges up, but with some practice and some timed attacks, you should be able to get it in no time. Then for his hook combos, you have a regular hook plus a hit, and then you have a hook plus defensive rush. Now to do the hook plus defensive rush, you do a regular hook swing, and once you land, it is important, it will not work if you are not on the ground, then you activate defensive rush. Now moving on to Yoda. Let's first review his base stats. So he's a little bit lower HP, decent regen, okay stamina. His stamina regen speed is really fast. Now let's review the star cards. Enduring Presence, a solid card that can be used sometimes. Unleashed. This card is actually glitched a little bit and limits the max ability damage by 30 HP. Agility gains an extra dash attack. I do recommend this. Opposing the dark side, I also recommend this. Earned It, I have, does not work. Jedi Mentor, I also recommend this card. Feel the Force, Presence gives more bonus health. I do recommend this as well. Size Matters Not is banned. Lightsaber Mastery, I do not recommend. Now for the best loadouts. For the first one is Agility, Jedi Mentor, and Feel the Force. Or Jedi Mentor, Feel the Force, and Opposing the Dark Side. Now let's review his abilities. He has a push that has a pretty long charge up time, and particularly for Grievous, greatly lowers his stamina. He has Presence, which gives him temporary bonus health, but can be removed with Dooku's weakened ability. A dash attack that deals damage through block. So, Yoda's lunges are a little strange. The first hit when you're trying to do a follow-up will be short, but then the second hit will be extremely long, so it will definitely take some getting used to, but that's just how Yoda works. Now moving on to the combos. Push plus lunge plus hit. So all you do is activate your push, then do your timed pace clicking to do the lunge, and then do a regular hit. Then you do the exact same thing, except for doing a hit, you do a dash attack. Then you do the exact same thing, but you do a dash attack, then a hit. Then a combo utilizing an animation cancel would be an animation cancel swing plus a dash. Then for the hook combos, there's hook plus hit, then there's hook plus dash. So you do a regular hook, then dash, and if the player is already low and you're not afraid to risk it, you can get an additional hit after hitting them with the dash. Here are some mechanics. If you dash and hit the player, the regular hit will always go through block. If you use a dash, then use Presence, it sort of cancels the healing animation. But if you jump and use Presence, it fully cancels the animation. And it's important to note, Yoda's animation cancels are much better than your average hero because his animations are so long and easy to counter. Now moving on to Anakin. His base stats are okay. He has very good HP, but with some specific star cards, his stamina is not great. His stamina regen is not great either, but he can still be an okay hero. Now let's move on to the star cards. Tenacious, which increases his health, I recommend. Massive Strikes, which is more damage, I also recommend. Pressure sometimes can be good, but most of the time not great. Control the Force, I do not recommend. Steamroll, again, sometimes can be good. Fierce Fighter, the cooldown time of Passionate Strike is reduced. It's actually decreased by 5 seconds instead of 4. Then Attraction, which can be very useful due to the extra range, but also if a player is within that extra range, it will pull that enemy out of their ability. For example, if Grievous is in his crawl and you use this, it will pull him out of the crawl. Raw Strength, I also recommend this. And then all of them is useless for dueling. Now on to the best loadouts. For the first one, I recommend Massive Strikes, Tenacious, and Raw Strength. Or Steamroll, Tenacious, and Attraction. So Anakin technically has 4 abilities. First, he has a pull, which will pull the opponent towards you, dealing some damage and ragdolling them. Then he has Heroic Might, which ragdolls your opponent, and you are vulnerable while doing it and directly after, but there is a 90% damage reduction while you're using it. Then Passionate Strike, which is a strike that can lunge onto an opponent and will always go through block. Then Retribution, which is very situational and will occur after you are damaged a certain amount, and it will force choke opponents. Then for an ability parry, you can parry, then use Passionate Strike. So all you need to do is do a regular parry and then immediately use Passionate Strike. Then you can also parry with Heroic Might. So instead of doing a regular parry, all you do is activate Heroic Might. Then you can also lunge with Passionate Strike. Now onto the combos. You can do a pull plus a hit, or a pull plus Heroic Might plus some hits, or a pull, then Heroic Might, then hits, then use Passionate Strike. It is important to note, if a player is too far away, the lunging principle still applies. Now moving on to the hook combos. You can do a hook plus a hit, or you can do a hook and then once you land, use Passionate Strike. Now moving on to Dooku. Let's first review his base stats. Pretty normal HP, decent regen rate, but has pretty solid total regen amount. As for his stamina, also pretty normal as well. Sith Control is banned. Then Finesse, which I definitely recommend, and it increases his stamina. Then Blind Spot, I do not recommend. And then Superiority, I sometimes recommend, but for the most part, not really. Initiative, I highly recommend. Then Last Seconds, I also highly recommend. Masterful Duelist, I also recommend this card. Then Dominance, I also recommend this card. Then Balanced Duelist, may be okay, but I do not really recommend it. Now moving on to his best loadouts. For the first one, it's Finesse, Initiative, and Last Seconds. Or Finesse, Initiative, Masterful Duelist, or Dominance, Initiative, and Masterful Duelist. One important thing to note is that he has 3 dodges and is the only hero to have this as a base stat. Now moving on to his abilities. He has a lightning that stuns and ragdolls and damages an opponent. He has Duelist, which makes him swing faster, deal more damage, but he can be hit while activating it. Then Expose Weakness slows the opponent, allows you to deal more damage, but you can be hit while doing it. Now moving on to ability parries. You can first parry with lightning. All you have to do is a regular parry, except instead of swinging, you activate lightning. Then you have a parry into lightning, and how you do this is do a regular parry and then immediately activate lightning. Now on to his lunges. He has a special swing that launches him forward called an AJ. He has 2 types of AJs. He has a 2-swing AJ where you have to swing twice, and then on the 3rd swing, you will be launched forward if you jump. And then he has a dash, then swing, and then another swing, and you'll be launched forward. Now, how to do this is relatively simple, and once you get it, you'll be able to get it again. So all you have to do is swing twice, then on the 3rd hit, jump while swinging. Then for the dash swing AJ, all you have to do is dash, swing once, and then swing again. So it's the same thing as a 2-swing AJ, but 1 swing less. Also, while doing this, you can turn your camera 180 degrees and sometimes even get hooks. Now moving on to his combos. You can stun, then lunge, and then get 1 or 2 hits. But remember, the 2nd hit, you'll sometimes be vulnerable. Now moving on to his hook combos. First, you have the hook, then a hit. Then you have a hook plus stun plus hits. To do this, you do a hook, then hold Q while you're doing this, land while you're still holding Q, and it should immediately activate stun. And once you do this, get your follow-up hits. Now moving on to Grievous. He has a great starting HP, pretty solid total regen. However, his stamina is not great. Now moving on to his star cards. Beating Heart, which I definitely recommend. Then Sith Trained, I also recommend. Jedi Killer, I do not recommend. Cowardly Retreat, I say it's almost essential. Flesh is Weak, I also recommend. Momentum, I do not really recommend. Ceaseless Assault, I do not recommend. Deadly Slashes, I do not recommend. Lineup Weaklings, I sometimes recommend. And it is also glitched as it deals the bonus damage right away. Also, it is important to note that pairing Beating Heart with Flesh is Weak is banned. However, you are allowed to use one at a time, not both. Now moving on to his best loadouts. For the first one, it's Flesh is Weak, Sith Trained, and Cowardly Retreat. Or Beating Heart, Sith Trained, and Cowardly Retreat. Or Beating Heart, Cowardly Retreat, and Lineup Weaklings. Now moving on to his abilities. He has Thrust Surge, which will lunge him towards an opponent, but it can be parried very easily. However, if you time it correctly, you can ragdoll your opponent and get some extra damage. Then Unrelenting Advance. It will activate and deal damage about every second, but it can be countered by hook swings, dashing through the person, or even running around. So be careful while you're doing it. Claw Rush. You can cause knockdowns and hit a player twice. It deals a decent amount of damage, but be careful because you can be pulled out of it by Anakin if they have attraction, and it can be parried and you can be hit while doing it. Now moving on to the ability parries. You can do a regular parry and then immediately activate Claw Rush for the parry plus Claw Rush. He has a special lunge called a Giga Lunge. To activate this, all you have to do is stand pretty far away, then while holding the sprint button, walk forward slightly, and then activate Thrust Surge and immediately click, and you should be thrusted towards your opponent. Now moving on to hook combos. He has a hook plus hits, and if you use his bunny hop, you can sometimes get 2 hits. Then a hook, then once you land, immediately activate Claw Rush for an extra couple hits. Now, he has a mechanic called a bunny hop. To do this, all we do is jump and swing at the top of the bunny hop. So to do this even faster, you hold block while doing this and do the same thing. Jump, swing, and do that again and again and again while holding block. Now moving on to Maul. He has pretty low starting HP, pretty normal regen, nothing else really too special. Now let's move on to his star cards. Lightsaber defense is actually glitched, and while you're doing a spin attack, you gain a 60% reduction, so I highly recommend it. Thrown to slow is actually glitched and only increases the damage by 19, not 30. Ranged throw, I do not recommend. Fool me once is actually glitched as well, and the cooldowns are reduced by less than 10%. With the saber being reduced by 4.7%, choke by 4.7%, and spin by 5.3%, which makes it a not great star card. Forceful thrust, I do not recommend. Flow motion, I do recommend. Savage, I do not recommend, and is also glitched because you only need to hit 4 people total, and it can be the same person 4 times. But I don't recommend it. Accelerated throw, highly recommend it. Uncontrolled grip, I do not recommend. Now moving on to the best loadouts. Accelerated throw, flow motion, lightsaber defense. Or accelerated throw, fool me once, lightsaber defense. Now moving on to his abilities. He has a lightsaber throw, which will throw his lightsaber and you can hit a player twice. You can also dodge left or right while doing this to get an additional hit to the opponent's back. He has a choke, which will leave you vulnerable to be hit while doing it, but if you time it correctly, you can throw your opponent. He has a spin attack that deals damage and is similar to Luke's and can be double parried as well, so be careful. Now moving on to ability parries. You have a parry, immediately activate spin. And then you can parry with the spin, which would be instead of doing a parry, you just spin and then parry with choke, which is very inconsistent and I don't always recommend it. Now moving on to his combos. Choke plus lunge plus spin plus hit plus saber throw. So you choke, and right as the animation is canceled and the player is close to you, you lunge after them, activate a spin, get a hit, and throw your saber. Then do a choke, then do a saber throw. Then do a saber throw, and then once the saber hits them in the back, activate your choke. Then the hook combos. You have a hook plus a hit, and you have a hook plus spin, and it's important to note you have to turn your camera and you have to land before you activate the spin. You have a hook plus a saber throw. You do a regular hook and then immediately throw your saber as quickly as you can, and you have a hook plus a choke. So do a hook and then immediately activate choke. Now moving on to his frame traps. For this to work, you have to be hit while you're doing your choke, which will bring you out of the choke, but the player will also be choked. And all you have to do this is choke, get hit, and then immediately hit the opponent, and they will float up in the air and be unable to move. Now, you can do a couple of things here. You can do a choke, frame trap, jump in the air and hit them, and then maybe go through a saber throw or a spin, or you can do a choke, frame trap, saber throw, then once they land, get a hit or spin. Now, the timing of this can be tricky, but I would recommend trying it with a friend and you'll definitely get the timing after a little bit. But all you have to do is get hit, then immediately activate choke, but you have to time it. Then a mechanic. Just like Luke, you can also use his spin attack through a player's block by either dashing through them or running behind them. Now moving on to Ren. He has average stats overall and nothing too interesting. Now let's move on to his star cards. Resilience, I also don't really recommend, especially for dueling since it's a 1v1. And it's also slightly glitched as it only works next to Force users. Closing in, I don't really recommend, and is also glitched as it only increases the leap by 30%, but it also affects his activation range, which can sometimes be useful. Total Control, I do not recommend. Solid Freeze, I do not recommend. Power of Darkness, I sometimes recommend. Bloodlust, I also sometimes recommend. Harsh Pull, I definitely recommend. Power Reach, I do not recommend. Berserking Tantrum, I definitely recommend. Now moving on to his best loadout. It'd be Berserking Tantrum, Harsh Pull, and Bloodlust. Now moving on to his abilities. He has a pull that can be used in the air or on the ground. However, the animation is pretty long, so be careful while using it. Frenzy, which is an ability that will lunge you onto your opponent and hit them 3 times, with the last one being unblockable. However, it can be avoided by dodging at the correct times, by allowing yourself to get hit by the first 2 ones and then quickly dodging twice. It also can be countered with almost every force ability. Then freeze. Pretty self-explanatory, it freezes your opponent. Ren also has a Giggle Lunge, which is activated by using your friendly and immediately swinging, and it will lunge you onto your opponent. Now moving on to the combos. Pull plus freeze plus 2 hits plus frenzy. Then pull plus hits. Then freeze plus 2 hits. And do the 2 hits, all you do is a hook swing, and then once you land, swing again. Then for his more complex one, it's pull, do a shortened jump swing hit similar to the one I explained for Luke, then freeze your opponent, go for the 2 hits, and then activate frenzy. Now moving on to his hook combos. You have a hook plus a hit, and then you can also, similar to Luke, run through your opponent and use freeze or pull. Now for the combos and the hook combos, the lunging principle still applies. So if they are far away, try to lunge onto them. Now for his animation cancel. You can animation cancel a pull or a freeze. All you have to do this is a regular animation cancel, and instead of swinging, you activate pull. And this concludes the ultimate Battlefront 2 dueling guide. Now you may have noticed I didn't cover everything. I did leave out the advanced things, such as prediction hooks, angles, and playstyles. If you're interested in this, feel free to leave a comment. I might end up making a video about it. If you're interested in joining the Dueling Discord, I'll put the link on screen now, and it will be provided in the video description. And a huge thanks to everyone that helped me out with this video. Their names will be on screen now. And if you've made it all the way to the end of the video, comment cannoli to show that you watched the entire video. Please comment your questions, concerns, or any ideas for what I should have included, what I missed, or anything else in between. I'll try to reply to all of them, but if I can't for some reason, feel free to join the Discord and they could answer your questions there.
Trouble with your scanners?
Trouble with your scanners? Lightning?
You guys gonna suck, dude.
Okay.
You suck! Look how far you are!
Doesn't swing.